One of my favorite things to do when I visit Japan is to visit retro game stores. I want to show you a place outside of Tokyo that I found to be amazing. So I recently visited Japan to give a talk about my writing down at Iowa University, which is about an hour away from Tokyo by speed train. I noticed there was a Surugaya store nearby, so I visited during my lunch hour. It is huge inside. The first 2 floors are full of toys, but the 3rd floor, which is full of Japanese retro games, blew me away. They have a sweet 3DS collection here, and it's one of the 2 consoles I brought with me on my trip. I wish they would have kept 3DS games region free like DS games so I could play them, but still pretty cool to see the Japanese editions. Some Pokemon games. Rune Factory. That's 7,000 yen. So the exchange rate is currently about 140 yen to 1 USD. It's always been about 100 yen to 1 USD in the past, so this is a good time if you're looking for retro games. Bravely Default looks nice. Radiant Historia. It's a nice collectible edition. Majora's Mask 3DS. Man, these box sets are really nice. I wish I had more space in my suitcase. I'm not sure what game this one is, but it looks fun. Ace Attorney 4, about 3,000 yen. It's a good deal. Another Ace Attorney game. I don't know how you all feel, but I think the combined 3DS and DS suite of games is one of the best of any consoles, portable or not. They have so many interesting looking games here, but I have no idea what they are. Please let me know in the comments if you recognize some of them. There's some Switch games starting with the Valis 2 collection. I haven't actually played Valis, but I've always wanted to check it out. Some Pokemon. Switch is the other console I brought with me, and I love the Switch collection. Such a great variety of new games, plus remastered older games. And this looks really cool. I'm not sure which one this is. What's really amazing here is seeing so many Switch Special Edition boxes in one place, like this Fire Emblem one. This is one I'm tempted to get. 6,000 yen, so it's about 40 bucks US. And it looks really nice. And now to the Wii U section, where there's a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles X. I'd say it might possibly be my favorite game on the Wii U. Just fantastic, underrated, and just a great open world from Monolith Soft. Star Fox Zero was also really fun. And Bayonetta, I actually like the Bayonetta 1 and 2 collection. It's awesome action from Platinum Games. And here's the Wii Skyward Sword Special Edition with Wiimote. I didn't get to finish this one, but I've heard it's great, so I hope to get to it on the Switch. Here's F-Zero X on the Nintendo 64. This is a great cover. And Ogre Battle 64, that's one I haven't played either, but I've always wanted to. The Japanese cover for Majora's Mask is really nice, though I do like the gold boxes of the US Zelda games. This Ocarina of Time cover in black and white is also very cool and dramatic. Here's some Game Boy Color games. Is that Bonk? Looks like a Zelda. Zelda DX. Dragon Ball. Gradius. It's really cool seeing these boxes, like this one, deluxe package for a game I'm not familiar with. But again, like in the States, I'm so used to seeing Game Boy Color games as loose cartridges, so it's really cool to see them in boxes like this. Grandia, alright, I didn't know there was a Game Boy Color Grandia game. Grandia is one of my favorite series. I love the first two games. The third one, not so much, but I'm curious if this game is any good. I should check it out. Here's Zelda and Oracle of Ages. Actually, I have Oracle of Ages loose, but I don't have the boxes. It's kind of funny just thinking how these days a lot of times the boxes are actually more expensive than the games themselves. So I might pick this one up just to get the box so I can put my game in there. But so this looks like... Oh, actually, I thought this was Super Mario Land, but it's actually Super Mario Tennis for the Virtual Boy. This is really neat seeing the Japanese Virtual Boy games. This one I don't recognize the name, but it's a virtual 3D shooting game. I've actually played the Virtual Boy only one time, and I almost immediately got a headache, so I put it down and haven't picked it up since. But I should try it out again sometime. Ultima Exodus on the Famicom, which is one of my favorite games. Willow. I haven't played Wizardry, I've always heard good things, but Willow, man, that's one of my favorite games. Godslayer, which is Crystallis in the US. Here's Boonies 2. Man, these are just really great games here. Super Mario 3. It's funny when I see Super Mario 3 because Super Mario 3 was the game that sort of got me on retro game collecting, and I'm really fortunate because I started retro game collecting right before prices exploded. And a friend of mine, I was in the car with him, and he was telling me how he had a huge retro game collection and they're actually not too pricey to buy. So I had no idea, so I was like, okay, let's check it out. And I actually looked up Super Mario 3, and back then, a complete copy for Super Mario 3 in really good condition was about $29.99. And I look at it now and it's like $100, and I'm glad I got the games when I did, because I honestly don't think I could afford to be a retro game collector right now with how much the prices have jumped. Top Gun at 4,200 yen seems a little bit high, especially considering in the US Top Gun is one of the cheaper games. Dragon Quest 3. I've actually played 1, 2, and 4 on the Famicom, but I missed out on 3, so I'm actually looking forward to playing the HD remake on the Switch. But Dragon Quest 2 was one of my favorite games. I loved how it expanded the whole party, and the game felt so vast, but it was also super hard. Final Fantasy 1 and 2. Man, this would have been amazing to have gotten as a kid. Just to even know that there was a second part on the Famicom would have been really nice. I love the original, obviously, that's one of my favorite games, and I've been playing every Final Fantasy game since then, so... This one, Fire Emblem. Is this Fire Emblem? Am I right? Fire Emblem. Rockman! Wow, it's actually one of the more expensive Famicom games. I think one of the things I marvel about the Mega Man series is that there were 6 games on the Famicom, and all of them were really good. I think like most people, 2 and 3 were my favorites, but even the other ones were really fun. Here's DuckTales. I really enjoyed DuckTales, and a few years back I actually got to talk to the producer on the Disney side, Darlene Lacey, and it was really interesting talking to her to get to know more about the game. And one of the interesting bits of trivia that I learned was that a lot of people wondered why Scrooge is colored red instead of blue like in the cartoon, and it was to make him stand out more against the background. 20th anniversary jump. It seems like a huge crossover, and it's only 600 yen, so I might pick this one up. This looks like Three Kingdoms. Oh, I love the Three Kingdoms series from Koei. Just the strategy element. It's really fun. If you're a fan of the novels, which are classics, I highly recommend picking these up. I played them from the Nintendo all the way up to now, and the funny thing is, like, yeah, the graphics have improved, and there's a lot more elements, but in terms of the gameplay, it's pretty similar from 1 to, like, the original Famicom one until now. This one is actually, it looks like a Dragon Ball Z game. I wonder what kind of Dragon Ball Z game it is. And here's a Saint Seiya game. Oh, I love the Saint Seiya series, so I wonder what kind of game this was. Tetris 2, I didn't know there was a Tetris 2. I wonder how it plays and how it's different. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! This was a game that I really enjoyed. The amazing thing about the game was that each challenger was a puzzle. Oh, Ninja Kid for the Famicom, the original version. I did a video review about this a couple years ago because Ninja Kid was actually my very first Nintendo game. here's Ninja Kid 2. I think Ninja Kid 2 kind of changed the platformer elements into an RPG, so it's a game that I've been wanting to get to. I should look if there's a fan translation or not. Here's Debius. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Akira, whoa! One of my favorite animes got made into a video game and we never got it. And the art looks really good in the game, so I'm curious what kind of game it was. I should actually look this one up. Here's the original Zelda 2, which I'm definitely picking up. And Mega Man Battle Network. I've heard these games are excellent. I've actually picked up the Switch collection, so I'm looking forward to playing these, but it's really nice to see the original GBA editions. And I'm on to the Super Famicom section. Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I've heard the remakes were really good, so I still haven't played them, but obviously I like the original games on the Famicom. And Final Fantasy VI, arguably the greatest game on the Super Famicom. And Final Fantasy V right next to it, which isn't far behind it. And here's Mother 2, which is Earthbound in the States. Amazing game, I'm definitely picking this one up. And here's Brandish. Actually, the interesting thing about Brandish is that last year I worked on a game called Cramped Room of Death, and I was looking for some reference for cutscenes. And so I watched a bunch of the cutscenes for Brandish, and I really liked them, so I kind of took inspiration from it. Obviously, Cramped Room of Death was a lot shorter in terms of the cutscene writing, but it was a really cool game to discover, so I actually hope to play it one day, so I mainly watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Here's the PSP selection. And I'm not that familiar with PSP games. I honestly didn't have a PSP, but this selection here is really nice, and so it makes me kind of wonder what I've missed out on. Again, like these games, these box sets, I know the Yeast series, but I'm not familiar with them. And here are a couple of the more expensive Super Famicom games. A lot of these games I'm actually not familiar with, or I just don't recognize the covers. I recognize Super Metroid here, which is 14,000 yen. That's pricey, but I think in line with what it is in the States. And the Mega Drive section, which was the Sega Genesis in the States. Here's Shining Force, which was one of my favorite games on the system, and its sequel. I love the Shining Force series, though I think the new games are mostly action RPGs. I hope it'll one day go back to its tactical strategy roots. Sword of Vermilion, which I know wasn't well received, but it's a game that I loved back when I played it. I actually really liked the story, because like the towns each had their own problems and you'd go and solve them, and there were so many different ways to play it, right? Or several different modes, and so there was like the first person view in the overworld. Then there was like the town where you go from like a third person isometric view, and then you'd have 2D scrolling on the boss battles. It was one of the most interesting JRPGs on the Genesis, and if you can get by some of the quirks, it might surprise you. Phantasy Star 4, probably the best game on the Sega Genesis, and the series overall is just one of my favorites. Here's Phantasy Star 2, that's probably my second favorite game on the Sega Genesis, and a personal favorite. I acknowledge 4 is the better game, but 2 just has a special place in my heart because it introduced me to the Sega Genesis. Phantasy Star 3, another game where it's imperfect, has a lot of flaws, but it had really cool concepts. And here's the Dreamcast section with Seaman. Seaman is probably one of the strangest game experiences I've ever had, and it kind of forecast what was coming with AI friends and the way it would interact with you and ask you questions and then respond to you. It was intriguing but also really disturbing at the same time. Here's Neon Genesis Evangelion, a Dreamcast game I didn't even know existed, so I'm curious what kind of game this was. And overall, it seems like there's a lot of games I haven't heard about for the Dreamcast that I wish would have come over here. And here's some Xbox stuff. Special sets for the Xbox 360. Let's see, Halo special editions. Wow, these look really nice. And Fable 3. And just a bunch of other Xbox stuff. These are the more expensive Sega Saturn games. Actually, I think I had it for a short time because I bought it off someone at work, and then when I was moving it just got lost. But, you know, again, just really cool games here. this is the PlayStation 2 section. It's fun seeing all these games I'd never known about. That Xenosaga 2 Special Edition looks amazing. That Kingdom Hearts looks interesting. And Silent Hill 2, is this a special edition? Not sure. But yeah, I mean, Silent Hill 2, what a provocative, fascinating horror game. I've talked about this before, but the Silent Hill series had an impact on me because when I was at LucasArts, I was looking for a new job, and EA called me up, and their pitch, it was a very interesting pitch, was they were making a new James Bond game with the art director from Silent Hill 2, so that was like an offer I couldn't resist. Here are strategy guides. I thought this was really cool. Just seeing the Japanese edition strategy guides. There's the mother one in the background and some of the old NES ones, so I wish I could read them. They also have a nice arcade and the games are free to play. So here's Haunted Castle. And again, like just other games where you can actually swap them out and switch between them. I was actually on my way out after purchasing some games when I noticed a Neo Geo section. I couldn't afford a Neo Geo as a kid, and it looks like I still can't afford it, but still fun to see. I mentioned game boxes earlier, and I found a special section devoted just to game boxes. It really feels like this store has everything. So I wanted to highlight some of the games that I picked up, and the first is Policenauts for the PlayStation. Policenauts is one of my favorite games. I'm a huge fan of Hideo Kojima, so obviously this was a must-have. And for me, like when I pick up games, a lot of times what I'm looking at are the manuals, because that to me is why I go for the physical copies. I love just looking through the pictures, the art. I unfortunately can't read them, but still it's just really cool to see. And here's Snatcher, another one of my favorite games. Even going back to it now, the story is so compelling, and the voice acting, just the narrative, every aspect of it is really cool. So again, anyone who follows me knows I'm a huge fan of Kojima Kantoku, so this was really cool to get my hands on. And I was surprised that the prices weren't too high. Here's Zelda 2. This is a game that's interesting because I loved this growing up, but a lot of people around me didn't like it as much. And so for the longest time I thought I was one of the few people that liked it, and I even wrote a retrospective about it at Kotaku. And since then, like, I've seen almost like a renaissance where people are actually defending it and even saying it's good. And here's Dragon Quest V, which along with Dragon Quest XI and 7 are my favorite DQ games in the series. I love the generational storytelling, which sticks with me until today. Thank you for watching this video if you've made it this far. I'm sorry if some of the footage is a little bit rough because it was just me recording on my phone. I'll include the store address in the description. The great thing is it's not too far from the main station, and I highly recommend going if you get the chance. I got some gems, and I know I'll be coming back next time I'm in Shizuoka.